There hasn't been a massive change in Walmart shoppers or users. There's just only so many people that can be signed up for a retail media network. Earlier this year, we were at about 80% of the adult population had some sort of retail media subscription or maybe like loyalty card. There's only so many more people that you can kind of squeeze out of the top of that.
Like we're kind of maxing out. There's a ceiling here.
You're listening to Media Monitor, where we break down what's happening in the media and the advertising industry and tell you what it actually means.
Well, Sean, I don't know if you know this about me, but you are in the presence of a former Trader Joe's store artist.
I am not going to lie. Number one, I did not know that at you. Number two, kind of cool. Because every Trader Joe's super unique and fascinating to see like how they draw stuff on their store, or like some of the murals, or like the produce signs with like the hand colored bananas. It's a vibe. I'm honored.
Vibe.
I'm honored to be in your presence.
And I'll tell you how it happened. I submitted my job application in writing, and the captain,
I appreciate that.
You know that it's a ship, right?
Yes.
So there's a captain who's the store manager. The captain ran out and said, "Wait, your penmanship. Do you draw?"
This feels like a story out of like 1958 of like, here's how I started my career. I knocked on doors and I wrote this man a letter.
The lore, I know. Turns out their artist in residence was taking the summer off to go to an art camp. This is a real story. And so
Wow.
More than needing a cashier and a stock shelfer, they needed someone to make those lines. And they gave me a budget to go buy chalk and go buy pens. And it was, I got to tell you, the best time ever.
That is pretty cool, honestly. And I know we frequently talk about our Venn diagram of interests. This is actually one area where there is also slight overlap. Not because of the art stuff. I'm a terrible artist, and no one has ever commented anything positive about my penmanship. But one of the first places early on in my career was Wakefern Food Corporation, which is kind of the co-op, wholesaler, parent, however you want to kind of frame it, of ShopRite supermarkets and fresh grocers and Price Rights in the Northeast. And I actually worked there for many years doing their insights and analytics, would store walk. To this day, one of my favorite things on the planet, which I cannot stop myself from doing, is any new place I go to, I find the closest supermarket and I literally walk it for like an hour. I love looking at the merchandising. I love seeing how end caps are done. I love to see like how they're managing their cold chains. It legitimately is still to this day something that super fascinates me, of like, what kind of SKUs do they have? What type of product is on shelf? I cannot get enough of grocery stores. I miss it to this day. I absolutely loved it there, and I love grocery stores.
I feel like we could do a whole episode on this because you're now making me recall a time when I could read you the code on the little label that would tell you what the employee discount price was for everything in a drugstore where I worked. But to your point, it's like, I don't think people realize the art and the science that goes into figuring out what is on the shelf at eye level versus that bottom row. And there's a lot behind the scenes there. So getting back to our topic for today, maybe.
And getting behind the scenes of a grocery store.
Maybe we'd spend some time talking about retail media networks, the modern day equivalent of our early career experiences and the trends that are there. What do you think?
Yeah, the kids love it. It's all the rage.
The kids love it. Well, before we dive into it, let's define it, right? I think some of our listeners will know what a retail media network is. Others will not. But
an impossible task, by the way, which we'll talk to by the end, of defining what is a retail media network. Is like, I am waiting with bated breath. Please tell me what your definition is.
I mean, I'll tell you, to your point, it is fluid. In the simplest definition, it's an advertising platform run by a retailer that lets brands promote their products directly on the retailer's own digital properties, like their website, their apps, or even in-apps or in-store screens, kind of getting to what we were talking about, physical locations, out-of-home advertising. Yeah. So when a retailer like Amazon, Walmart, or Target, some of the most popular and biggest retail media networks that we know, sells ad space on their platforms to brands using shopper data to target ads very precisely. That's what we're talking about here. How does that land with you, Sean?
Yeah, I think it lands nicely for a retailer, which we'll get to later on. Is there's been a lot of copycats that are lumping themselves into a retail media network that are not anywhere near retail, which is always interesting, and also kind of then asks the questions of what happens to that kind of in-store component that you referenced as it relates to advertising and all that. But yeah, a lot to unpack.
Absolutely. So, and why are we talking about this at all, right? I think it's important to just kind of turn the clock back. I say this a lot. We got to look at history, right? So when did these retail media networks emerge? Well, they've been around for a long time and, homegrown efforts, but it was really kind of around 2018 that we started to see them sprouting up. Amazon's had one since 2012, but now they are a meaningful contribution to the US media market growth. We've talked about the decliners, but this is growing. And so we wanted to unpack how it's growing, why it's growing, and what we think is going to happen. And I'd love for you to kind of give us, what are the trends that you're seeing around this space?
Yeah, happy to jump into it. So kind of right off the bat, one of the things that we obviously look pretty closely at is retail media spend, because it is where a lot of dollars are flowing. If we look at the overall US media market in terms of what we can see in our data for last year, 24 to 25, they were meaningfully about, let's call it for simple math here, maybe 15% of the overall growth came from retail media networks alone. So it's not chump change in terms of where the dollars are flowing. And, there's a couple of reasons for it. One, it's great for endemic media, what we might call something that is a naturally good fit. Endemic media is if you sell, I was going to offer up a terrible, like, if you sell shin guards, or maybe like you're Adidas and you sell, soccer shorts, running in a stadium where the Red Bulls play is endemic media, right? You're there, you already know that the audience there is there for that. Retail media does a great job with that for companies within food, right? Personal care, shampoo, all of that, because you already know that people are there and they're in the right mindset for your advertising. So it works really well for that. Another growth engine and kind of trends that we're seeing is it's this kind of closed loop attribution, meaning if I run an ad, I don't need an outside measurement company to tell me what happened. I know if I ran an ad within a retail media network, they can tell me, yes, my shopper saw your ad, and yes, they bought something, or they had it in their shopping cart, or right, they can get to that level of detail through loyalty card data. If you have a membership that you log in on a website, all of those things help them with attribution. So naturally, there's these kind of two things that are working for them that are helping them grow, and also kind of like showcasing the value of a retail media network in today's age, where, for a lot of brands, they're being pressured to try to figure out, is this ad working? And it's really kind of a fast, quick route to say, yeah, it worked. Somebody bought it because they saw this ad, right? And we can get into the whole last click attribution versus actual funnel, all that, right? Like, there's a real honest debate about that, but like, retail media networks have no concerns with making the claim that they saw the ad on the platform and they bought it because of them, right? And that's partly what made them that 15% of growth in the US for last year.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? You're giving them so much information by making your purchases. They know who you are, they know what you want. So why wouldn't they serve you an ad with something that makes sense for you to buy? It's just logical, right?
Yeah.
So in terms of like those trends, it's 15% of it. How do you see that evolving? Who are some of the major players? Who are some of the surprising players? You mentioned, for retailers it made sense, but there are some others that are kind of inching their way in there. Let's talk a little bit about who's making up this group of companies.
Sure. So I think the obvious place to start is Amazon, right? Amazon is the retail media network. In our data alone, Amazon is probably around 40% of all of the ad revenue that we see associated with retail media networks is specifically just coming from Amazon. And they've been growing, and they're expected to continue to grow. In our data, we're showing them 20%. For next year, we have them, or I guess this year, 2026, we have them forecasted to grow another 22%, right? They're massive and they continue to grow. It would be silly not to kind of call them out as the retail media network. But a close second is a lot of the grocery stores, right? The Krogers of the world, the Albertsons, also kind of the big box. Walmart is clearly part of that, right? And so if you label all of them of like more of this, like the retail in retail media is a big part of that as well. And they probably make up, let's call it like another 40% collectively, maybe 35% of our data. And they're growing also at around 23% kind of forecasted for this year. So very healthy growth. And then to your question of like, okay, and a little bit of what I alluded to of like, what is a retail media network? It's these like other players that are adjacent, that they have a captured audience. They have some sort of like way to track audiences and purchase behavior. But at the end of the day, aren't technically retailers. So Connective, which is United Airlines kind of media network, Instacart, Uber, Lyft, even American Express, right? All have these media networks where they say, we have a unique subset of the population that we can advertise to. We know a lot about them. Come and spend your ad dollars with us. And they're small, right? They're kind of the remaining 15% of our pool, but they are growing at 2x the rate of everyone else, 44% forecasted for 26. So in terms of some of the players in the space, those would be a few that I would call out. Obviously, there are a lot more, which I think is also worth noting. December of 2025, there are 51 kind of major scaled retail media networks. Any retail media network reaching over 2 million people in the US. There's 51 of them today, in terms of scale, which is literally hockey stick growth. If you kind of go back to right around when the pandemic hit, there was about 22 of them. And so that has been kind of almost a 2x growth rate in just 5 years, which is fascinating. In actual 2024 alone, that was kind of the peak expansion. There were 13 kind of new retail media networks that kind of came on board in that year alone. 2025 was a little less. I think it was around 10-ish, if I remember correctly.
And what, I mean, I'm assuming that, these companies are going to announce when something is coming to generate buzz. What are we hearing about launches in 2026?
Crickets. We're hearing crickets. Nada. What we have heard, which I think we'll kind of talk to of like one of the growth pillars for this year, is we haven't heard any major launches. By this time last year, I think we heard about 4 so far. So it's not like, oh, it's only April. It's like, well, if you look back to by April of the last couple of years, there were at least a few companies that had come out and said, hey, we're starting our own media network. And so part of the question is like, hey, a lot of retail media growth has really come just from like organic expansion of places to put your ads. Like as more media networks have opened up, right? It's easier to run ads on more places. But with no announcements coming, how much of this is then going to be reliant on existing platforms to grow, right? That's one big question mark that I have for 26. But like, yeah, it is a pretty stark a kind of call out, right? Usually in CES the last couple of years, you would have gotten 1 or 2 announcements, but none this year.
So the feeling is those who did, and like we might be kind of hitting a little bit of a plateau in terms of that growth of new retail media networks emerging.
Yeah. And like on the plateau front, right? There's also the question of people. I think the other big thing is like there hasn't been a massive change in Walmart, shoppers or users, right? There hasn't been a massive change in Amazon subscribers. Yes, they continue to grow, but there's just only so many people that can be signed up for a retail media network, right? Like I might have Kohl's rewards, I might have be a Home Depot member. I might have a Walmart subscription, but there's only so many that I'm willing to sign up for. And if we look at the numbers, basically earlier this year, we were at about 80% of the adult population had some sort of retail media subscription or maybe like loyalty card or something like that. There's only so many more people that you can kind of squeeze out of the top of that. And so a lot of the growth in the past has also come from just like new signups or new users. And that's also something that's kind of maturing and plateauing. So you kind of have these two maturing forces between not a lot of organic growth coming from new platforms, and also the existing customers are kind of now stretched over a lot of the retail media platforms to begin with.
Yeah, I guess, and I'm wondering, like, is another potential angle for growth, because we were talking about this with some of our Canadian colleagues, and they said, "What do you mean you have ads on Uber?" And I said, I opened up my app and I said,
here
like,
you go.
these right there. But they don't have them. So I guess maybe there's a path for growth if regulation changes in some countries, but I mean, like, to your point, I think you're right. Like, we're kind of maxing out, and there's, I, for one, do not belong to 51 retail media networks. I think it would be interesting to know the average, like, person. They
Yeah,
probably pick, like, their main grocery store. They're not going to be on 10 different ones. I mean, I guess I've had to expand because I have family on the East Coast and they have a whole different chain of grocery stores. So I have to, have that for my once a year when I'm in charge of the grocery order for this thing. But like, you know, it's there's a ceiling here.
for sure.
So
Yeah.
okay, so if the user growth is slowing, what are the other ways that retail media networks can grow?
Yeah, I mean, time will tell. My guess, based on strategy, is I think you're going to see three ways retail media tries to drive new revenue in 2026. That's not the old school way of thinking about retail media networks where you're like, hey, you're on our site. Would you like to buy my ice cream? Right? Or promoted search. I think that those are still going to be there, but those are part of the maturation that comes with the market. The three that I would highlight would be one, some sort of offsite inventory. So offsite being like if Amazon today owns and operates their Amazon.com website, they could partner with, say, like a streaming service and actually use the retail media data and kind of resell some of that other kind of partnership inventory, with the idea being that like we'll give you some of our audience insights, some of their purchase behavior if we can sell some of your inventory. So I would actually expect that to expand. When we look at
That
our
makes sense.
data, I would estimate that probably about 5% of retail media's revenue in 2026 is going to come from some sort of offsite inventory. And that's up, by the way, from like 1% just 2, 3 years ago. So again, 5%, you're like, why are you even talking about this in terms of growth? And you're like, yeah, but it is like a material change. And it's also fundamentally a different strategy, right? You have a different team, you have to sell it differently. There's different go-to-market strategies. It's more complex than just saying, here's our website, we run ads on it, you buy some stuff, you're done, right? Like that's not
Mhm.
how retail media has gone to market in the past. So it's going to require a bit of like internal changes and strategy shifts. The second is kind of these audience solutions. Is so think of like an Experian of the world or something like that, where I want to find the 15 people who are interested in buying my car. Hopefully, I have more than 15 people in an addressable universe, but whatever. Because of the
I don't know,
way,
Sean.
I
You
don't know.
told me about your cars. I
Yeah, it's
don't know if
fair.
there's 15.
That's fair. So personally, to my cars, yeah, there might be two people in the world that are interested in buying a 18-year-old car that has many miles on it and is practically falling apart. I get that. It's an acquired taste. But if we think about kind of those users, I know that profile, but no one's going to kind of give me that information outright because it is a violation of privacy laws. So you do these things that are like data clean rooms where you can kind of like match up. This is the person I'm talking about. And then the audience provider is going to say, okay, well, we think it's this person in our data. Let's match them up. And now we have like a 1-for-1 match. And then they do that over time to try to build out, say, like an audience profile. My guess is you're going to see a lot more announcements this year. And we've already seen multiple ones in terms of announcements in just Q2 2026 that are going to say, hey, I'm going to partner with X clean room technology, or I'm going to partner with Y audience solutions, where now my retail media data will be available to do this match to find your right audiences in this space. And so like, are they going to use their proprietary data to kind of do more of that and act as like a third party data solution? My guess is yes, right? Because it's yet another way that it's a high gross, in terms of profitability for them. It drives a lot of volume and it doesn't require a lot of work on a retail media, front to kind of do some of these announcements, right? It's a very minor lift, but it brings back a lot of money without them having to do a ton of work, but it's very rich, very unique proprietary data. So like everyone wins in this space.
Right.
So like I see that as growth. And then, that last pillar is really like some of the organic growth of like everyone who has done it has already launched a media network. That might be true for retailers. There are a few mid-sized players out there who aren't in the retail media or the retail space that might have an opportunity to kind of jump in on kind of creating that media network. And so that's also another area of growth of just kind of fueling that space there. So like between those three pillars, I still expect growth to be coming from retail media for this year, but it's probably going to be a little bit of a different flavor than in years past of those like straight in-store promoted search type ad revenue.
Okay. Well, I, for one, feel enlightened, and I think there's a lot to watch here as we look to see the non-retailers who may enter the space. I
Yeah.
think that point about pairing together your own data with other audience data to build an even stronger targeted campaign makes a ton of sense.
Yeah, for sure.
So lots to watch here. Thank you so much for sharing this with us, Sean.
Yeah, it's been real, and it's also been great to find out that we have yet another thing that goes on the overlap of the Venn diagram. I'm sure there's a technical name for it, but wherever that middle part is, let's add now.
Yeah.
We're up to two things, maybe
I think
three.
two.
Yeah,
I
two.
think yeah, we can
Yeah,
safely call it two. So
it's a big
I
deal.
mean, I'll be thinking about you when I walk the grocery store and check the shelves this week.
Please do. I will be traveling for spring break, and the very first thing I will be doing is heading to a Sprouts to check out what is the new merchandising, because I don't have that where I live, and so that's always a fun one.
I'm sorry for you. I love a Sprouts.
Yeah, it's good.
Those are
It's
legit.
good. It's good. I'm a little bit disappointed by their Italian meat section here in the Northeast. It's like even your most basic supermarkets have like wall to wall anything you want imported. Sprouts, when I went, was like, we have salami, and just like, well, I don't want that. That's like, so yeah,
That doesn't count.
yeah, a little bit of a regional difference.
All right. Well, enjoy your spring break, and I will chat with you later, Sean.
Sounds good. Talk to you later. That's Media Monitor. Follow us and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts every Wednesday for a new episode. And as always, thanks for listening.